How did you get started in the business?
Actually, an uncle of mine ran the art department at Universal, and I got started as a carpenter there. And I worked at Universal in the mill, making like Victorian moldings and that sort of thing for about 2 years. And but I always saw what they were doing in the special effects department. I wanted to get in there. And as it turned out, they didn't want to let me out of the mill. They bring a guy along so far, they didn't want to let him go, was their answer. So I ended up quitting there, and I just started canvassing all of Hollywood, and I ended up, my first job in special effects, oddly enough, it was at Disney. It was building robots. It was Bob and Vincent and the Maximilian robot. And from there I went, I worked at Disney for about 3 years and worked on like Herbie Goes Bananas and The Dragon Slayer and those sorts of films. And then I freelanced for a while. I worked on One from the Heart. I worked with Chuck Gasper on Ghostbusters. And then I got an opportunity to work on I was working at Spelling Productions doing television special effects. I was doing Heart to Heart. And a friend of mine called me and offered me a job on Brainstorm. And Bob Wagner was married to Natalie Wood at the time. And it was a real family kind of environment on that show. And I asked him if he thought, it would be a good thing for me. And he told me, well, we hate to lose you, but it would be a good opportunity. So I went to work on Brainstorm. And on that I met Doug Trumbull. And Doug Trumbull, who was the visual effects supervisor on Close Encounters and actually the first Star Trek movie and various films, was the director of Brainstorm. And he liked what I had done for him. And he started a company called ShowScan. And their ShowScan was basically 60 frame per second photography and projection, as opposed to 24 frame. It sort of gave a more, almost like a 3D look to the film. And one of the first films we made there was for an expo in Tsukuba, Japan, called Let's Go. And for that I built a little remote control robot named Pal. And John Badham, when he was looking around town for a robot, saw that film, and the producers basically read my name off the credits, and they called me up and gave me a script on a Friday, said, read this and see what you think. And as soon as I read it, I just knew I had to do this movie Short Circuit. And so I spent all weekend doing a proposal, and when I met them on Monday, I handed them this 30-page proposal that basically broke down every frame in the film and how we could build the props to do it live action. And I understand as I left that meeting that John Badham said, that's the guy that's going to build my robots. And it was a great break for me. I was 29 years old, and everybody in town wanted to do it. Carlo Rambaldi, Al M., Doug Trumbull. And I was awarded the job, so that's basically how I got into the robotics side of things.
How was it to work with John Badham on this?
John was really great. I mean, he's one of the directors in Hollywood to this day who understands that it's important to plan your shoot and shoot your plan. And he really got into in terms of his research while he was preparing all the other elements of the film, the characters and polishing the script, which was really a pretty good shooting script from day one. He would come to the shop, 2 or 3 times a week after we had gone through the design phase that preceded it. And there were 50 people in that shop, and he knew every one of their names. I mean, he would say hello to them and what are you working on today, and get right down into the details of how the cables worked on the fingers. And it's really great because when a director thoroughly understands the mechanical workings of a complicated action prop, he didn't tend to ever ask it to do things it couldn't do. Things that John knew that it would be difficult for the action props to do, he had storyboarded, and we were able, with Chuck Gasper, who was the mechanical effects supervisor on the film, we were able to work out special rigs so that everything could be done live action. Even the flipping of the coin was a rig. When number 5 is moving the discs around, that was Tony Urbano's team puppeteering the arms with wires and so we didn't really shoot from the hip on anything. We knew well in advance what was expected. shots that the full-size remotely controlled robot couldn't do. We had special rigs for, and there were a lot of them. And we were really able to bring a lot of life to the character as a result of John's, professionalism, really.
How was it to work with Sid Mead?
Sid, what can you say about Sid Mead? It was fantastic. I was really just thrilled to be in the same room with him. And we traded back sort of design ideas, and a lot of my concept of what a robot should be ended up in the final rendering, and I just was really pleased about that. I mean, I basically think that at some point robots are going to be integrated into our society, and when they are, not only are they going to have to move around the same sort of spaces we are, but if people are going to work with them, they're going to have to like them. They're going to have to like their personality and their aesthetics. And the other thing is that in order for a robot to perform as an actor, you have to give it the same tools an actor has, and the eyes, the eyebrows, the expressions in the face, and Sid was really great with working with us to help us define that. A gentleman named Chris Ross, also, who was my in-house designer, also an Art Center graduate. Sid's very involved with the Art Center school. Was there, and he knew Sid from previous work that he had done with them, and Sid was really great. A guy of Sid's caliber could easily intimidate you if that was his mission in life, but it's not. He's just a very kind man, and very unintimidated himself. He knows he's talented, and he doesn't mind other people bringing out what they can for the project. It was just a great experience.
How many number 5s were actually built?
Well, there were 15 originally, and there were 8 that were fully remote control with 45 different degrees of freedom or servo actuated axes. 2 of those 8 had the 45, that is. They had the hands that were fully dexterous. And then 6 of the 8 had basically everything else but the hands. They just had some posable hands. The heads, there were actually 4 heads, and they had a simple disconnect so that we could use the same heads on various robots. And then there were 7 that we called stunt bots that were basically all of the parts from the production run, the chassis and the fiberglass and vacuum form parts that made up the exterior were there, but none of the running gear was there. There were no motors, there were no servos. They all had lock-off joints. But all of the pieces, whether it was a servo-driven unit or a stunt unit, had the same components in them. And if it was a servo unit, you would simply connect a servo shaft, which is the motors that actually drive the functions, at say, a shoulder point. Whereas if it was a stunt robot, that same point that you would connect also had a place that you could put just a stop screw, so that there were no servo motors, but the stop screws were put in so you could raise and lower. That way we could take any part of any robot and put it on any other robot, which was key. And the reason you have so many robots, at some point we were using 5 at once, so you had to have a couple of spares, of course. But you end up with multiple units. We'd have second unit, and sometimes we'd be doing even a third camera pickup shot. So you'd have sort of 3 teams working at once on various things, mostly 2 at a time. In addition to the actual robots, we had 3 puppets. Also, the heads would be interchangeable either on the puppet or the robot, so it was the same 4 heads. But the puppets were a Bunraku style. When I worked with Doug Trumbull on PAL, he had introduced me to Bruce Schwartz, who was a local Los Angeles Bunraku puppeteer. And it's an amazing sort of art form. It's like a dance with connection to the puppet. And Bruce is a very talented artist. And he actually was also in the running for the puppeteering originally. And basically what we did was we had a means of connecting the head of the robot to the head of the actor with a piece of headgear. And the puppeteers that we ended up working with, Tony Urbano and his crew, opted for having a handle that they could use on the head. The puppet also had cable-operated